Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hey, this is Jen. You're listening to the Bible for Busy People, and we're getting a little real today. What does it take for you to really lose your temper? For many of us, the repetitive action of doing something or having something done to us again and again and again and again with no relief can send us over the edge. Maybe somebody nagging you to get something done on their schedule, or somebody who repeatedly commits the same minor offense towards you. As a mom, for me, it is saying the same thing over and over again to my kids without any response. It's led to a couple outbursts. I am being real. And in the heat of the moment, it's been taking away prized things like screen time in our house. Jesus appeared to have a moment like that in the Bible. But what if there's more behind it than what we see on the surface? So we're talking about trees this week. Fig trees are common in the Middle East, a tree that can survive and produce fruit in the hot, dry desert environment. They require a lot of sun. They're a source of food, both fresh and dried, and they were and continue to be important to the economy as an export. It provided food on the road for travelers as well as shade. It was even used medicinally, figs, to heal King Hezekiah in 2 Kings chapter 20. Thank you to the Daily Compass website for that. Apparently, it was also all the fashion in the Garden of Eden. Okay, is that too soon? In Genesis 3, verses 6 to 7, it says, "When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves." Immediately, when Eve and Adam partake in the forbidden fruit of knowledge of good and evil, they realize that they're naked. Where there once was no shame or awkwardness, now they feel the full force of both. To solve the problem, they sew together fig leaves. And I'm super curious about how that went down. Like, who taught them how to sew? How did they come up with that idea? And what materials did they use to sew? I've always wondered that. BiblePlaces.com says that fig leaves are about as large as a human hand, and they're hairy on one side. So it was probably a logical choice with what they had. Might have even been kind of soft and comfortable, but it still probably fell short quite a bit. At the end of the chapter, like we read yesterday, God made garments of skin to clothe them. Okay, that leads to another question. Sorry, I have so many, but had animals had to die before that point? Now they became not only creatures to care for, but also creatures to be used for people's needs. Definitely different from the circumstances of the Garden of Eden. Throughout the scriptures, fig trees are associated symbolically with prosperity and fruitfulness, but the death, destruction, or decay of them is associated with judgment and ruin, and they often represent the nation of Israel. One sign of prosperity is in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 25, which says, "During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel from Dan to Beersheba lived in safety, everyone under their own vine and under their own fig tree." The king of Assyria tries to trick the Israelites into making a treaty with him by offering each their own fig tree. There are lots of examples in the scriptures of fig trees being used as imagery for prosperity or for judgment, but there's one example that I found that seems to show both in Jeremiah chapter 24. Starting in verse 1, it says, "After Jehoiakim, son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and the officials, the skilled workers and the artisans of Judah were carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. The Lord showed me 2 baskets of figs placed in front of the temple of the Lord. One basket had very good figs, like those that ripen early. The other basket had very bad figs, so bad they could not be eaten. Then the Lord asked me, 'What do you see, Jeremiah?' 'Figs,' I answered. 'The good ones are very good, but the bad ones are so bad they cannot be eaten.' Then the word of the Lord came to me. 'This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Like these good figs I regard as good the exiles from Judah, whom I sent away from this place to the land of the Babylonians. My eyes will watch over them for their good, and I will bring them back to this land. I will build them up and not tear them down. I will plant them and not uproot them. I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord. They will be my people, and I will be their God, for they will return to me with all their heart. But like the bad figs, which are so bad they cannot be eaten, says the Lord, so will I deal with Zedekiah, king of Judah, his officials, and the survivors from Jerusalem, whether they remain in this land or live in Egypt. I will make them abhorrent and an offense to all the kingdoms of the earth, a reproach and a byword, a curse and an object of ridicule whenever I banish them. I will send the sword, famine, and plague against them until they are destroyed from the land I gave to them and their ancestors. Okay, so I'm realizing now as I'm reading this that this doesn't actually talk about fig trees, it talks about figs, but figs come from trees. So we're going to let that be what it is. Also, Jesus had some experience with fig trees too. In one of the scriptures that I find hilarious personally, maybe that's just in how I read it, it's how he first met Nathanael. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Nathanael approaches Jesus, never having met him before, and Jesus says of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael says, "How do you know me?" And Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." And that's how Nathanael becomes a believer. Also, Jesus famously cursed a fig tree. And do you know, up until studying this out for the first series, I never came to this specific conclusion about it. This is in Mark 11. In verse 12, it says, "The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, 'May no one ever eat fruit from you again.' And his disciples heard him say it." What it sounds like is Jesus getting upset about a tree that doesn't have any fruit for him to eat. Maybe he's a little bit hangry and frustrated. He curses the tree. I always figured it was Jesus having an off day, maybe an example of his humanity, but not a sin. However, many commentaries point to the fact that Jesus was frustrated with the temple next, as we see later in the chapter when Jesus flipped the tables of the money changers in the temple. He was also frustrated with Jerusalem and with the whole nation of Israel, as the fig tree has been compared to in past scriptures. This checks out with other moments when Jesus expressed frustration and grief for Jerusalem and for those in spiritual leadership, like in Matthew 23. Jesus was frustrated by their lack of faith from time after time of God trying to pursue and deliver them. It wasn't so much about the actual fig tree than the symbolism of God's people not producing spiritual fruit, staying stuck and stagnant. Thinking of the fig tree and how it provides so much value when it thrives in a desert environment, what does it take for you to thrive, even in the hardest times? What helps you to feel renewed even when you feel pushed to your limits? I'll leave you with that, and let's talk again tomorrow. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume two things about you. First of all, that you're a busy person, and second, that you are in need of a restful break. Cannon Beach Conference Center is the place for a beautiful coastal retreat, whether it's one of their enriching conferences or your own church or ministry event. You can find out more at 800-745-1546 or visit cbcc.net. Thank you to Cannon Beach Conference Center for sponsoring the Bible for Busy People.
Thank you for listening to The Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or want to go deeper in your faith, visit our show notes. Will you take a moment to share with a friend and leave a review? It helps the Bible get into even more people's minds and hearts. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at purposely.com.